Back in the early 90s, Mitsubishi was able to build a pretty large following of enthusiasts with the original Eclipse sports car, made even more popular from the first Fast and the Furious movie that came out back in 2001. Now, I'm happy to report that the Eclipse is back. Unfortunately, it's not back as the sports car that we knew and love. Instead, it's now known as the Eclipse Cross, a crossover that competes with things like a Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Subaru Crosstrek. So this is the first all-new Mitsubishi product that we've seen in the last 5-10 years maybe. How did Mitsubishi actually do? That's what we're here to find out. So Mitsubishi has definitely been struggling in the US as a brand. However, they have seen their sales improve every year. And last year, they actually moved a little over 100,000 units for the entire year. So that's a big benchmark for them, which is why Mitsubishi is kind of trying to ride this wave of additional sales with an all-new product. And honestly, the company really needed an all-new product. An all-new SUV, I'm a little bit more apprehensive about it having the Eclipse name, but I'll keep an open mind here for this review. Now, one thing about the Eclipse Cross is it's a pretty good-looking crossover when you look at the front fascia. I really actually like the design and the lines of this car. Now, this one being the top-of-the-line SEL trim does come with LED headlights, LED low and high beams, LED daytime running lights. You do have a halogen projector fog light and turning signal at the bottom, but the SEL trim is the only one to get the full LED headlights. All the other ones will have the halogen projectors. Now you can see the grille is the same Mitsubishi grille that we've seen on some of the other products. This very distinctive chrome line that goes here from the top of the headlight down here. You have some silver trim with the black accents. It's a very almost Lexus-like crossover, which is not a bad thing. This is a pretty distinctive car, especially in this very attractive shade of red diamond paint. It's a really beautiful looking crossover when you look at it from the front angle. Now, this is a pretty coupe-like design for its SUV, for the profile, so we'll talk about the dimensions in a second. These 18-inch wheels that come on the SEL trim, they look a little too small. I kind of wish Mitsubishi also put like a 19 or maybe even a 20-inch wheel with a lower profile tire. Having the Eclipse name on this thing is kind of making me hope that it's a sportier crossover. We'll go into the test drive later on. Now, in terms of the design, its wheelbase at 106.4 inches is actually longer than the bigger Outlander by an inch, which is strange. At 175 inches overall, it's about 4 inches longer than the Outlander Sport and about 10 inches shorter than the bigger Outlander, which offers the third row. So this kind of slots in between those two vehicles. I'm kind of wondering if Mitsubishi is going to just get rid of the Outlander Sport in general. And out the back, I'm having deja vu to the Pontiac Aztec from 15 years ago. This design here with the split window that goes across, I don't particularly love it. Some of you may have liked it, and you may have even liked the original Pontiac Aztec back in the day, but again, the styling is distinctive. You can't really argue that. Underneath the rear bumper, you're not going to find any visible exhaust tips. I'm kind of sad to see that there's no exhaust tips because this is a sportier looking crossover. But another thing I'm also sad to report, no power tailgate. Mitsubishi doesn't offer that on this car, which is a huge surprising omission. One thing they do offer is decent cargo capacity for the segment if you kind of compare it to the subcompact CVs, but at 22.8 cubic feet with the seats up, this is about 10 cubic feet less than what you get with a CR-V or a RAV4. If you fold down the seats here, Mitsubishi says this car will have around 48 cubic feet of space, which it doesn't really give you a totally flat floor, so cargo capacity is definitely lacking in that regard. Now underneath here, you do find a temporary spare tires, so at least Mitsubishi doesn't make you deal with a fix-a-flat kit. So moving on to the interior of the Eclipse Cross, first up, when you approach the vehicle, you're going to notice it does come with the company Smart Key Access System with push-button start. This is actually standard on the upper trims of the vehicle. If you guys go for like the lower ES trims, it'll just have regular keyless entry. No remote start on the actual key fob. Very little in terms of buttons, just lock, unlock, and then panic. As you guys know, this vehicle doesn't have a power liftgate, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, when you approach the Eclipse Cross, you're going to notice there's a button on the outside of the door handle. When you touch the button, it locks the doors, and then the mirrors also electrically fold. The button itself is also updated from the last Mitsubishi I drove, which doesn't feel quite as cheap. When you touch the back of the door handle, there's no sensor. You have to touch the button again, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, looking at the interior of this particular one, I hope you guys like black, because black is the only interior color option, at least on this SEL trim. It does come standard with the real leather, the heated seats and whatnot. I do like the contrast orange stitching. The seats themselves, they're a newer design. They're like a 6-way power adjustable, but there's no actual lumbar adjustment, which is definitely strange, at least no power lumbar adjustment. The steering wheel, you can see, it's a slightly newer design, and the interior just kind of makes a really great first impression. Definitely shows that Mitsubishi is trying from the imitation or the faux carbon fiber, the silver painted plastic. It's a nice, welcoming looking cabin. Now, stepping in, because it's an SUV, it has a really nice, easy step in height, and you can see it has a really good commanding view of the road, so it's gonna make a lot of buyers happy when you first get into this vehicle. Now, when you shut the door, it sounds pretty solid. This is an all-new vehicle, as I said, so it's about time that Mitsubishi finally gave us that. Now, when you want to turn the vehicle on, just put your foot on the brake. Like every other car, just keep the key fob in here, push this button here to fire up the engine. Now you can see my tester has an optional head-up display that's included with the technology package that's very similar to what Hyundai uses in the Kona or what Mazda used to use. It gives you like a separate screen that flips up. If you guys don't like the head-up display, you can also just turn it off by pushing a button down here labeled HUD, and then the screen itself will go away. I know Mazda's in the past didn't allow you to put the screen away, so that's a really great feature that Mitsubishi was kind of listening to with the head-up display. The gauges you can see here, they're very similar to the last Mitsubishi I drove. I kind of think that Mitsubishi needs to go with like a bigger LCD in the center versus the smaller helper screen. But they're clear, they're easy to read, very legible. In terms of the materials, it's actually pretty solid in here. The dashboard is a soft touch graining material. It also feels, or it's also put together well. The graining feels nice. There's a lot of piano black plastic trim here. It's also soft touch over this portion of the dashboard. The door panels are also soft touch on the upper portion, which is nice. Chrome door handle, piano black accented trim. It's nice and padded here where your elbows would rest. For the armrest, the windows are only one touch express up down for the driver. I kind of wish Mitsubishi had also made it for the passenger. There's more buttons over here. Hard touch plastic down here. The steering wheel also feels pretty nice, although the leather could be smoother. It has a decent bolstering extension. There's big metal paddle shifters here on the steering column, which Mitsubishi does pretty well. It's also a tilt telescoping steering wheel. The center stack here, first of all, this is an all-new infotainment system that Mitsubishi is introducing. It's a 7-inch touchscreen display, which you can also control from the little touchpad right here, which is very similar to what Lexus does and Acura, although big difference, there's no cursor. Instead, you kind of just swipe your finger over to the left or the right or up and down. And the response could be quicker. Again, it kind of forces you to take your eyes off the road. Thank God Mitsubishi at least just makes this a touchscreen. It's a little bit of a far reach for me, but if you guys really don't want to mess with the touchscreen, just click on the buttons here and you can get away around with that. As you can see, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is standard on the LE trims and up. Definitely a great feature. However, if you guys want to use navigation, you have to go to the CarPlay or Android Auto Nav because this car does not have factory embedded nav available at any price. When you go to the home page there, you can see there's your typical home layout, which gives you all your different sources, your vehicle settings, your usual audio sources there, your phone settings. I like how Mitsubishi kind of puts Apple CarPlay right at the beginning, but this is not like interchangeable. You can't rearrange the apps like you can in some cars. I don't like the volume button here. If you want to turn the volume up and down, first of all, it's a far reach for the driver, so I'll never use that. There's no actual physical volume knob, which is annoying. Get used to using the steering wheel controls here for volume because that's what I found myself using most of the time. Usual Bluetooth phone controls here. This vehicle does have adaptive cruise control. It doesn't have full stop and go. It's very similar to what the Outlander has. It'll bring the vehicle down to a stop, but it won't actually hold it for you, which is a little bit of an annoyance. When you put the vehicle into reverse, this trim gives you a standard 360 camera, which is definitely great. Wasn't expecting that at this price point, but the Outlander plug-in hybrid also had this feature. The graphics, they're okay. They're nothing super, great, but it does get the job done. You do have parking sensors as well. Looking at the rest of the center stack here, you can see your dual zone climate control is down here. with pretty, typical looking buttons here. You have a heated steering wheel that's included as part of the tech package. There's an eco mode, 2 USB ports, a nice little area here where you could put your phone. No wireless charging. Mitsubishi doesn't do that. Your heated seat controls are down here. This button here will lock the or change the kind of the different modes for the all-wheel drive control system between like an automatic, snow, or gravel. The super all-wheel control works pretty well in Mitsubishi products. You can see here's the touchpad. It doesn't have haptic feedback. It's a little bit on the smaller side, but you do have shortcut buttons here, for example, to get you back to the home page. To go to audio, there's a big back button. Again, most of you will probably end up just using the touchscreen as long as you have longer arms. Otherwise, you'll get really frustrated using this. Electronic parking brake here with an auto hold feature, and then pretty good sized cup holders, decent amount of storage. It's a nice padded armrest right here, which is nice. It does not slide forward or adjust, but it's at a pretty good angle. There's pretty good amount of storage in there. No actual power port or USB in there, but another removable shelf right there. Above you, my tester has the panoramic sunroof, which doesn't go full length, which is kind of annoying, but rear seat passengers can open and close the vents or the shade if they want. That does not physically open. However, this does physically open, and it does let in a lot of light, which is great because black is the only interior color option that you can get on this particular trim. The glove compartment also, it's actually 2-tier storage. It's not lined with felt, but it's damped. Good amount, or pretty good size. And then the seats, I find them to be pretty comfortable and supportive, better than the seats that I found in the regular Outlander that I drove a couple weeks ago. And overall, the interior of this car, while the infotainment system has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I don't like the touchpad, but thankfully you can get by that using the touch screen. Mitsubishi needs to add a volume knob back, and then maybe the option of embedded nav. The head-up display is definitely a nice feature, but overall, I think this interior is actually a huge step forward for Mitsubishi, and it'll surprise a lot of people. So as a crossover, you need the back seat to be very useful since this will be a family vehicle, and thankfully, the Eclipse Cross is actually pretty good in that regard. Getting back here, you can see, first of all, I don't like the way the headrest design is. Like a lot of subcompact cars, you have to put the headrest all the way up. Mitsubishi does that so it doesn't block your view. But once you have the headrest up, you can see the seating position is definitely high. It feels like it sits up higher than the front seats. Legroom is pretty good. I'm 5'7". The floor is reasonably flat. And I'm surprised to see 2-level heated back seats back here, but no rear seat air vents. Now, those heated rear seats are optional as part of a technology package that my tester has. The panoramic sunroof, although I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't go the entire way, Mitsubishi does give you your own little control here for the sunshade. It doesn't actually open the glass roof, but it gives you a little bit, shade, like whether you want shade or whatnot. But thankfully, when you fold down this armrest here, you get 2 cup holders, and overall, the back seat is definitely not bad. But it's missing a couple of key features like the rear seat air vents, but I think a lot of people are going to be pretty surprised when they get into the back seat of the Eclipse Cross. So being an all-new product, Mitsubishi actually has an all-new powertrain for the Eclipse Cross. Now, it is a 4-cylinder engine. It's a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder with direct injection. It's turbocharged also. So again, we haven't seen this powertrain in any other Mitsubishi product. It's very similar to what Honda uses in the CR-V and the Civic. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't make as much horsepower as those vehicles. Different engine, different car company. 152 horsepower and 184 foot-pounds of torque. So that's less horsepower than the Civic or the CR-V, but more torque. It's got a pretty good amount of torque, so we'll keep an open mind when it comes to the acceleration. Now, no manual transmission is available. It's all paired with a CVT transmission. Only the base Outlander or Eclipse Cross has front-wheel drive. For $600, you're pretty much going to have all their super all-wheel control, which is something I would probably just go ahead and add. Fuel economy, you would think it'd be really good in this configuration, but it's only rated at 25 in the city, 26 on the highway. Pretty paltry numbers, if you're asking me. This vehicle weighs around 3,500 pounds, so it's pretty heavy. Let's get out on the road and see how it performs, shall we? So as you guys know, with a name like the Eclipse Cross, Mitsubishi is kind of opening up a can of worms here. We all remember the Eclipse as a performance-oriented sport coupe from the 90s, and now it's a crossover. So I'm going to keep an open mind. This is an all-new 1.5 liter turbo, all-new platform. Let's get out on the road and see how this Eclipse Cross drives. Now this engine is basically a new engine. It's the first turbocharged 4-cylinder, that's a new design from Mitsubishi since the Eclipse, or since the Lancer Evo decided to get killed for 2015. And at first thoughts, or at first glance, you're thinking maybe it'll have the performance of a CR-V. The 1.5 CR-V with the CVT is surprisingly peppy. And that's kind of where the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross may disappoint slightly. This engine while it is an improvement in terms of acceleration and torque versus the last Mitsubishi I drove with a 4-cylinder, it definitely doesn't have the refinement that you get with the Honda engine. With only 152 horsepower, it's pretty disappointing horsepower, but 184 foot-pounds of torque is a pretty good amount of torque for this engine. And basically, when you put your foot down and get it up to highway speeds, the CVT, while it is responsive enough, the engine just is a very buzzy and unrefined engine. So you don't really find yourself wanting to, push the engine because it just doesn't sound all that great. Now, most of these Eclipse Crosses will spend their lives out on the open highway like this. So how does this thing drive? Well, to me, these 18-inch wheels, they give it a pretty decent ride quality. I mean, it's nothing totally groundbreaking. There is a little bit of wind noise here as I, cruise at around 65, 70 miles an hour. So I was expecting it to be a little bit quieter. The suspension is very soft in this car. They've tuned it more for comfort, which I don't know why. With something that looks, this aggressive and this unique, I was kind of hoping Mitsubishi would give us a little bit sportier handling. The steering also is pretty light and numb. It doesn't really talk to you much, so you can basically do this. The vehicle doesn't really do anything. So that's kind of a disappointment. So the Eclipse name is kind of being bashed by being on a car that's very soft and squishy. I would prefer it to be on something a little bit sportier to drive. But, getting up to highway speeds here, it cruises along nicely. It just, again, there are more sportier offerings in the segment. Visibility in here is also pretty good. You have good sight lines out of the front, big side mirrors. The view out of the back, though, oh my God, that Aztec-like rear is cutting across. I mean, it's something you kind of have to get used to, but surprisingly, the actual surface area of the glass is pretty generous. Thankfully, this car, when you get it this fully loaded trim, has, all the driver assistance tech stuff. It has adaptive cruise control, which will come to a stop. It won't hold you there. It's got lane departure alert where it'll kind of beep at you, but it won't actually steer, which is a little annoying. It has blind spot monitoring, cross traffic alert, forward collision alert. All those features are included on this car, which is nice, although you do have to get this high trim to get the adaptive cruise feature, which some of the competitors are offering it to you as standard equipment, so it's a little bit disappointing. This car also does have paddle shifters. There's no actual sport mode in the transmission, but when you start using the paddles or the manual mode, it gives you 8 different ratios to play with, which don't really, improve acceleration, but they kind of give you manual control of the CVT, which is nice. The paddles themselves mounted to the wheel or the column, which is great. They don't move. The structure, as I go over a few bumps, I'm noticing a little bit of shimmying and shaking. I believe that was like a nice little rattle that I heard from the back. It could have just been the seatbelt buckle, but I'm not entirely sure. A little disappointing. As you can see here, going around this off-ramp, ooh, this car is steering. It doesn't give me much feedback. Really soft suspension. The tires, I can hear them complaining. Woo-hoo-hoo. This is not a sporty crossover. Very disappointing in that regard. That beep you're hearing is from the lane departure alert. And again, tires are complaining, steering very numb. I'm just really disappointed that Mitsubishi didn't tune the handling of this car to be sharper. I mean, for God's sakes, it has the Eclipse name attached to the rump. All right, let's try it from a standstill here. Ooh, it's very soft initially. Whew, this thing needs more power. It feels like it gets to 60 in around 10 seconds. I think the actual official time that some of the publications have been getting is around a little over 9. That's a second and a half slower than the current CR-V, and even slower than like a Mazda CX-5. And now that thing takes like 8.4 seconds. So it is an improvement over the 2.4 liter or 2 liter you're gonna find in the Outlander Sport, but I'm very disappointed with this powertrain's performance. I just expected it to be a little bit more. I wanted the engine to be smoother, more refined. I wanted a little more guts when I put my foot down. The CVT is responsive enough, but it'll kind of remind you why you hate CVTs if you're an enthusiast. But maybe the fuel economy is great. Well, as I said earlier, fuel economy is a disappointing 25-26. That's actually lower than what you get in the Outlander Sport and the Outlander, the big one with the 4-cylinder, because this only gets 25 combined. Now, maybe it does better in the real world. I've been averaging in my week's worth of testing around 24 miles to the gallon, so not horrible, but not great either. So fuel economy definitely needs some work. I'm just surprised with this 1.5, this CVT. Honda is able to get like 33 mpg out of the CR-V. So I don't know what Mitsubishi is doing there, but from driving this car, you can tell that the company is definitely trying. The structure feels stiffer than the last Mitsubishi I drove, but again, that's a pretty low benchmark. It could feel a little bit stronger, a little bit more nimble feeling. Suspension tuning needs work, but seats are comfortable. Visibility from the front is good once you get used to that atrocious view out of the back. Generous amounts of equipment and a surprising amount of tech features on this car, but as we'll talk about in the conclusion, the price is a little bit eye-watering when you guys go to this higher end trim like this one. But overall, if you want a crossover that's different, the Eclipse Cross certainly delivers on being something that's a little bit more unique in the segment. So although we've seen Mitsubishi really struggle as a brand here in America, I'm really happy to see them come out with an all-new product. It's something that the company really needs to help boost their sales even more, and they're on target to have a record-setting sales for 2018, and this vehicle will undoubtedly help Mitsubishi get to that goal. As you guys saw from the drive, it's a surprisingly decent crossover with good features, good space on the inside aside from the small trunk, and a good amount of tech features, especially when you look at the actual price point. I think where the Eclipse Cross really starts to fail is in the actual name of this vehicle. Mitsubishi shouldn't have called it the Eclipse Cross because it sets your expectations high for it to be a sportier driving vehicle, because the Eclipse had such a huge cult following back in the 90s. And as you guys saw from the test drive, this is not a sporty driving vehicle. The 1.5 liter engine is a little bit buzzy, it's a little bit underpowered. The CVT also kind of makes the drone even louder. Its handling, the steering is very numb, the suspension's too soft, and really Mitsubishi has tuned this car to be more of a comfort-oriented car. So if they just called it the Outlander Sport, I probably would have been a lot happier with the actual car. But if you guys are looking for something a little bit different for a sport utility vehicle, what's it going to cost to put an Eclipse Cross in your driveway? Well, this vehicle, because it's all new, starts a little bit more expensive than what you would expect for a Mitsubishi. It starts at a tick under $24,000 for a base ES model, add $600 for all-wheel drive. The SEL is pretty much loaded. It has things like the adaptive or the LED headlights, the upgraded leather heated seats and stuff like that, the Pano sunroof. This one starts at just under 28,000 bucks. Add $2,500 for the tech package that mine has. It gives you the full driver assistance and other features like that. This car as it sits is around $32,700, which isn't that expensive when you look at the rest of the competition. However, I think Mitsubishi kind of priced it a little too high. I think fully loaded like this, it should start at just under $30,000, but I imagine most of you are probably going to go to this and find dealers discounting them significantly. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next video.